Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm joined once again by Ondrej Nekvasil, who is the production designer for The Wheel of Time, who has been on the channel a few times before. And it's always so much fun getting your perspective and your thoughts and ideas going into all of what it takes to create such, a massive season of television. And I think the first thing that I wanted to ask was with this season, once again, we're seeing the locations grow. We're going to new and different places. And Tanchico kind of felt like that new, really built up set that was probably the biggest new location. Would you agree with that? Or
So actually, the biggest or the most challenging for us, artistically and regarding the budget and other stuff as well, was actually Cold Rock's Hold, which
ooh,
wasn't like
okay.
a maybe because it was like a less ornate, there was less details. It looked kind of normal, but it was really like a challenging set to build. And but that was like a for me that was like the biggest challenge of this season was the Cold Dogs Hold. But Tanchico was the like really right after that, mostly because the Tanchico was actually kind of exterior of Tanchico was established with the three sets, and one of them was in South Africa, and two of them were in Prague. And of course, after that, we had all these interiors in Prague on stage because we are trying to do like I always shoot all the interiors in our facility in the journal studios in Prague, and to go to location because of the exterior. So we are trying not to do any like interior scenes on location if we don't have to because of the actor or because of something like that. But we are always trying to squeeze all the interiors to the stages and shoot the exteriors on location. So, but Tanchico was actually built on the three places. The port of Tanchico, we were using the backlot set at the Cape Town Film Studio, which is kind of like a port, kind of basic port it looks kind of like a Caribbean, and there was a kind of approach to the gate. So that was the part which we shot in South Africa, and that was the all like that flashback of young Leandrin, escaping from the house, like falling down underneath the statue. So that statue and all of that was there. And unfortunately, there was much more scenes written for that, and we had to cut it because of the schedule issue. So, but there was like more scenes in that port when we start thinking and building that set. The second part was like that kind of main street of Tanchico just behind the wall, which is at Barandov Studio, which is kind of like an old medieval castle. So we completely like changed the look of it, and we built the street in within that behind these walls, because it looks like a medieval castle with the stone walls. So we built the facades and the streets of Tanchico there. And after that, the last one was the entrance to the Panarchs Palace, which was the set which we completely built at the Barandov Studio, because we need that, like that impact of the water
Yeah.
and underwater sequence with Nynaeve there, yeah, for the
Was
episode.
there actually water there? Like, was there
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like that. The only thing which was like the magic trick, like it wasn't as big as there was no sea, of course, but there was
Yeah.
a water, and she was like falling into the water, and she was shooting all the scenes underwater, because I think that was really important for the impact on her face, and all of that was like really different than, because there was a discussion if we are able to shoot it completely dry, and we decided to go with the pool. So we had like a pool where we shot the exterior of the palace, plus her falling into the water, plus underwater sequences. And after that, we pump out the water, and we did that moment when she was walking out.
Yeah, this whole scene in episode 8
Yes.
within the palace in Tanchico, the Panarchs Palace, I thought had some really incredible little areas and hallways and nooks and crannies where we've got so many characters kind of exploring and moving from one room to the next, and it really felt like, you're going through this labyrinth and maze type space, and there was always something new to look at. There was, I think, more towards like right when they're coming in, there's a room where it's statues lined up, and I remember pausing and trying to think, "Look at these statues," and then there's the scene where Matt and Min find the twisted redstone door
Yes.
frame, and we've got this other room with all of these antiquities and animals, and that was just one of these locations that I thought was really fun to
Yeah.
kind of, like, move through with the characters.
Yeah, there was a kind of big decision which we made during the prep, because it's like a page count wasn't like a too big, because they are just like a moving through the palace all the time. No, just moving, but there was like a really lot of walk and movement. So there was idea that, okay, let's go to some castle and shoot that on real location. But the issue which I had, and the director and the DP as well, that we are not able. Usually on a location, you can dress it, you can add some details to it, but you couldn't like change the color of the wall, and you
Right.
couldn't like edge it down, of course, because it's a protected monument usually, and you have to keep it as it is.
Mhm.
So you can dress it, but you couldn't touch the walls because they are protected as a part of that whole historical monument thing. So what we did actually, that we kind of decided we will build that set, and we kind of used every single piece of set which we still had, and kind of completely changed the surfaces, colors, windows, all of that, and kind of we established that world using the old set and revamping them to do that stuff. And also the similar stuff was with the props and the set deck items, that we actually kind of use the statues, use the stuff which we used before, but a different context, different color, and all of that was working for us for that Panarchs Palace, because I think it was really important that we have these kind of like people walking into that strange place, and I really like the fact that we changed that concept of not being like a shiny glossy palace, but being kind of like a dark spooky place, which is kind of partly run down, and there are still people there, and I think that was really better choice. Of course, like some people are complaining it was too dark, but I know that we have like a lot of details and everything in that in this room. So it was like a really good looking and working for us. The set, all of it was working well.
Yeah, I wanted to ask also about when Matt steps in through
Yes.
the, door frame, was that on location, or was that done shooting somewhere else? So, like, was that in a whole separate space probably
Yeah, there
then?
was a whole separate set, and in that case, we are trying to follow the description from the books as much as possible about the Genji Tower. The only thing which we change, of course, because of this, it's like a cinematic thing, is that as per the descriptions, there are no windows in that space, which is like a very tricky for us, like a visually to shoot in the space without any windows. What is the light source and how it's working. So
Yeah.
but also we want to show there's no like a door there. There were like and the shape of the space is like a star with the 8 peaks. So, and also that there were pillars which were holding that room, which was actually a kind of reminder of that arch, or that the archway itself, because the shape of the twisted arch with the
Yeah.
fox and snakes was actually kind of visible in that set as well. And if you are watching that, you can see that the pillars in that space, they have a similar shape like like the arch itself, or doorway, or how we call it. We call it arch or doorway. And yeah, so there was separate set, and we work with Sarah Nakamura, our book expert, and she was like really finding all the details, everything what was kind of like a mentioning about the look of
Yeah.
the tower from inside. And I think that Sharon did the same thing with the costume, that we were like trying to do as much as possible, not only from one book, but from all the books, how much is that described, and even like a human remains and all of the things which are there in that room. So there was a separate set which was And Rafe specifically asked for that if we can be as close as possible to the description in the books. So
Yeah.
there's like a no escape, no door. There's no like a way for him to escape because there are these like spikes. The only difference was that actually we put these little kind of slits for the daylight to come in, and that was that was a major difference. Like because we want to make it more cinematic and more visually pleased, for us.
I knew that was one of the scenes that, I mean, all the way back since season 2, a lot of people were saying, "Are we gonna get the eelfin or ailfin?
Yeah.
Is it gonna happen?"
Yeah.
And as I was watching the episode, as soon as you see the twisted stone door frame, you're like, "Oh, it's happening.
Yeah.
It's happening." And then, I mean, it was just such a moment, him kind of, like, falling through and then seeing the costume, the everything, the space, the way that the 2 actors really kind of moved around this little space. It was so much fun getting to see all of it happen, and then, we're jumping from them to the balefire scene, and it was
Mm.
just so
Yeah.
much fun. All of that happening in Tanchico was just really delightful, getting it to all, come to fruition, and all of these big book moments
Hmm.
where it was just a lot of fun. It was such a fun finale. It was a great set. Even, the collared man statue
Hmm.
on the harbor of Tanchico became such an integral part of the story
Hmm.
because at first you see young Leandrin at the statue, but it comes back later and it becomes this whole part
Yeah.
of the story
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
used again and again, from even when it's just the drawing of it that Leandrin's using to kind of
Hmm.
explain and show, like, I know what the collar is and this
Yeah.
and that. And it was just really fun getting to see how that space and that set was really woven through the whole story, even if it was just mostly kind of like the finale moment from episode 8 in that location. But there were so many fun ones. I mean, you brought up Cold Rock's Hold, and that was just, it's so vibrant. I think that first scene when they're walking in and all of the characters are kind of like looking around like, "Oh, wow, look at this place." The Aiel is just home to them, but our, characters from outside the Aiel landscape are kind of really taking it in, and as a book reader, I felt like I was them as they're walking in. It's like, "Oh, wow, look at it." Like, it's this space that we've heard about for, so much within the books, and getting to see it was just, it was so much fun.
Yeah, so it was like an interesting development with this set because originally we were looking for the canyon, or like kind of like a very narrow place that actually ended up in that Cold Rocks Hold, and the idea was always like to build the Cold Rocks Hold as a set, but the original idea was really following these kind of settlements that the people they carved. Their homes into the rocks, like like the famous one is that the place in Turkey called Cappadocia, that
Yeah, yeah.
so that was like a first inspiration for us, and we were kind of following that, and I was like we were working on the design, and I had a scout in I think June or something like that, June 2022, I guess. That was a 2023, 2023. And I was looking for that kind of narrow entering the narrow place to that Cold Rock Salt place, and I found completely different setup. That we found these kind of very strange piles of the big rocks in the desert of it's a kind of it's a really the North Cape in South Africa, up to the border with Namibia, and there are these kind of like a very strange areas that you have like a really a flat desert, and suddenly you have like a pile of the big rocks, and it looks like almost like the giants they kind of play with the rocks and they put them together on the big piles,
Yeah.
and it doesn't make any sense, and the rocks look completely different because they are smooth and they look like more like an ocean bed than anything else. And so what's happened is that I was thinking maybe this is something else. What about if that place is actually built from these rocks, and it has that kind of feeling of that this pile of rocks, and between these rocks there are these kind of squeezed and openings, so they are kind of able to cut some openings into them, but also it's more like that nature create these kind of very strange spaces, just piling the rocks on the top of each other.
Oh, interesting. I mean, that would really work within the context of like the history of the Wheel of Time because the breaking of the world, like
Yeah.
it would have created some almost unnatural
Yeah.
looking
So
spaces.
and I was like kind of inspired by that, and I was thinking, okay, maybe, but we need an entrance to that place, and we found spot which was actually exactly what I was looking for, like a kind of narrow alley, which was kind of created by this like a big pile of rocks, and there was kind of like a moment which looked really like a door, and we enter it, and we were on our set in Cape Town, and what we did that we built that set that looks like a pile of rocks more than the like the solid rock and the carved shapes into it. So, and of course, as usual, like there was a kind of idea or aspiration to shoot as much as possible inside that set, but again, you want to tell much more stories that you are actually able to tell at the end. So there was like a really that process of the what has to go, and and some of these exterior scenes in that set had to go because of the like a time pressure, or not only because of the schedule but also the length of the each episode. So
Yeah.
and that's kind of like that kind of moment that you are sorry that you have a kind of interesting space, you want to show it more, you want to tell more stories about that space, and but you don't have that time to show it because it's really rush in some way. Now
Yeah.
it looks like that okay, we had like 8 hours but for one book, but it wasn't enough. Sometimes you need more time to tell all these stories you want to say. Okay, that's the thing.
Yeah, I loved the garden aspect of it as well because like it's just really striking seeing like greenery in this like harsh environment.
Yeah.
And I think that was just, I don't know, it was really pretty. The color palette of the landscape was just, I mean, so much fun getting into that little section of the story.
Yeah, because our goal was that if you're in the desert and there's like a zero shadow, like there's like a no shadow at all, there's like a to find a shade or find the kind of like a really kind of dark place is almost impossible. And we said like, what about if there is that place that actually had that shade, because there is that cold rock
Yeah.
holding that cold, and they are actually able to create that kind of like a catching the all the humidity from the airs, and actually kind of be able to put the water on it. So we had like a separate designs how to show it, and but there was no time to show it on screen. How they are catching the mist, and how they are like really working with that mist, catching it, and making that water for the for these plants and all of that. But it was too many things to tell, so it wasn't like visible on screen, even like we had it kind of ready to tell that story, but there was really not no time to do it. So but in general, like it was kind of like that maybe in the middle of the desert there's a kind of space which has that shade, which has that kind of cold area, which has some kind of water, and that little oasis is just between these rocks. It doesn't look like anything, and we are just like moving around the corner, and suddenly you have that kind of it looked like almost like a well, that you are inside a well, and that well inside is green, and everything else is actually just sand and dust, because that's the desert area here. So that was kind of like a idea behind this one.
Yeah. Last time that we talked, I have to bring this up because I was so excited when episode 304, the Ruidion episode came. I was watching, and the moment that I saw the Sharome, I was like, there's the Claude Nicolas Ledoux globe There it is.
Yeah.
And I was so excited. But I think for one, that was probably, in my opinion, that was probably the best episode of the Wheel of Time, hands down, beautifully shot. I mean, the story was incredible, but the visual aspect of it as well was just so striking, moving through different periods of time and then getting to take all of that in, whether it be through the location itself, the breaking of the world or the creation of the glass columns, or this scene with the Sharome crashing down to earth. It felt like every moment there was something new to look at and really take in. Was there any aspect of that episode that you were just like really, really happy with?
So it was like a challenging thing for us because the thing is that um, we were discussing a lot how to achieve the Rhuidean and the moment when they are stepping into the Rhuidean. Like we were thinking about like using the volume. We were thinking about
Mhm.
using the set outside,
The
and
volume is the LED
yeah,
screen,
the
correct?
screen
Yeah.
which is kind of helping you to create the world. Like they are using that a lot of in the sci-fi, and nothing was like a kind of like a working because of the schedule and because of like the budget and all of that together. So, and also, like knowing how the fog is working, you couldn't go outside, so you have to be like inside the box because otherwise you are losing the mist
Yeah.
and fog all the time. So what we decided, we have to work with the stage, and we took one of the biggest one in Prague, but it's still just a 60 by 40 meters. So it was like the one, and also we decided to go with the gray background for that. So it wasn't like a green screen, but the gray background for that, which helped us for some shots. That some shots were real, like a real, like that in camera, and
Mhm.
some of them was of course like a extension, like a visual effects extension, but that combination of the gray background and sandy cover, and that was kind of important for us that we can have like that kind of general environment. And after that, what we did, and I was talking about it the other day, like that each moment or each sequence was like a different setup. So we're like at the moment when they are stepping into the city, when they see these big statues. So like that, we have these statues like not completely built, but quite
It was so cool.
extensively built. We have like these kind of big walls and big set pieces. And the next day, so we have to track them out, clean the stage, and put the glass pillars. And the next day we have to clean the glass pillars and put the Avendesorah tree there. And the next day we have to move bring the rings there. So it was kind of like a kind of that environment was like a one big foggy place with the sand all over and the gray background and the big stage. And we have to always like redress it for each sequence, which was like a. So we did the model, we discussed it like on the model how to do it, but there was just like a paper model in the scale 1 to 50, and suddenly we had to do it like a 1 to 1 on stage. And of course, ideally we will have like a more stops, and ideally we will have like a more moments of that. But we have to be kind of also decently regarding the schedule, that we have to fit ourselves into our schedule. So all of that was kind of important for us to be to be efficient also towards our schedule and the budget. Creatively, like we discussed every single element a lot. The most challenging were actually these pillars, because the pillars are not easy, even like to produce them, even to make them, and like to have these glass pillars, which was actually resin. Clear resin, it wasn't like easy, and after we did a lot of tests how to make the light, because the resin is not catching the light as good
Mhm.
as the glass, so we have to kind of cheat it a little bit, that inside each pillar there was a kind of light source which was helping to make that kind of depth in the pillar. So it's like every single moment had some challenges there. But what was I think for everybody kind of like a big challenge, that the actors, they just like saw the pictures and the concept art, but then we shot this like a half a year before we shot it on real location. So like you are on stage in Prague, it's a summer, okay, but you have no idea what will be the journey to the Rhuidean, like what will be how the wall of spears and all of that will look like and where you are. And we were shooting that in March 2024. 2024, and that interior was shot in July 2023. So it was kind of like challenging for everybody to kind of like get into it and understand, okay, that's the story, that's what will happen.
Yeah.
And that was like I think that was the most challenging thing about the whole episode and whole that concept of these kind of flashbacks and short moments and like these kind of turning moments. It was like a really that everybody will understand, okay, this is that moment, we are here, we are stepping back. It's a like that flashback number 3. We are in this culture, like Rand is playing somebody else when he's much older in that scene, and all of that was kind of challenging for everybody to understand, okay, here we are, that's what we want to say. And I think it was really challenging for everybody because, as I said, they were these kind of little pieces, and only like a really small group of the HODs, they know exactly what we are doing. That, but for the rest of the group was really like what the hell we are doing
So
now.
confusing. It had to
Yeah.
have been so confusing for them, especially, I mean, I've read the books multiple times. I've read that chapter multiple times. It is confusing for me even.
Yeah.
So trying to get like a whole group of people together and get everyone on the same page just seems like such a Herculean task where it's like, how do we get everyone coordinated and planned out, and then you guys are also, you rolled right into filming for season 3 after season 2. So I mean, that's just, it's really impressive for one. I think that it turned out seamlessly. I would have never guessed that there was a question of, okay, this moment where like the spears are in the ground and then walking into Ruidion would have been done in 2 different time spans, 2 totally different locations, but the way that it was pulled off, like, I never questioned that at all.
Yeah.
Like, and that's, I mean, that's the, I guess, the real gift of that episode is just how big it feels.
Yeah. So that was like really, when I read that episode, I like my first impression was like my first thought, like how we will do it, how we will do it, because I fully, and I said like guys, it's it's really like it's a mind blowing, but how the hell we will do it, so because like it's really, the TV world is like about shooting the sequences and like the scenes, like that, like that you have a set, and that set is that you have a scene which has 4 pages, and that you have that set, and you will use it for the 4 pages, and so you will shoot there one day, and like it kind of put schedule this way. But
Yeah.
we had like a bunch of scenes which were like a 1/8 of the page,
Yeah.
and it's like there's a lot of 1/8 pages, like scenes, but they are really like a regular scenes,
Mhm.
and that was like a one thing. And the second thing, which I'm really happy that we did it, was that like that rollover rig, that the camera rig, which was like helping us to do that kind of movement.
Yeah.
And honestly, I was like when we had the first discussion, I was thinking that this will be like the rotation, like in the horizontal line, like the horizontal, like a rotation about the people, and there will be that kind of film edit that you are passing across the tree or pillar or something, and suddenly you are in a different world, like that, the circle is still the same, and like a kind of
Yeah.
thing. But and it was kind of still like a horizontal, which is like a more doable thing. And Thomas Nepper, our director, he brought a documentary about one filmmaker who was like doing this kind of experimental film in the 70s and 60s, that he was like prepping that, like at that rollover rig with the camera pointing out the center of the circle, but the circle was vertical. And that was like a really thing that it looks kind of easy, but it wasn't. It's like because in that lens you can see everything around. So it's like always the location has to be really completely prepped, because if you are in two rivers, you see like a depth there, and you can see even like as a glimpse of second, you can still see the whole set. So it was always like a whole set of it. And the second one, that you want to make that circle, so you have to go underneath the floor. Like we dig a lot of ditches and cut a lot of floors to be able to go down, because that was really important for us to make that kind of movement that is like the vertical circle, but you are going underneath the ground. So you are not stopping above the ground, but you are going underneath, and suddenly the world is completely flipping. And I think that was a really good and very good decision, like creatively, but it wasn't like easy to make it and like put it together. And we had to, like a team of the riggers, they had to kind of manufacture that rollover rig for that, because schedule wise we were not able to rent it, because it was like we never know when we will be able to put it on our schedule. And so we had like scenes the day and after. Okay, there's a rollover rig scene as well, which means that that scene, which takes like 10 seconds to 15 seconds of the screen time, has to be shot as well that day. So but
And
it
how
was
much prep time went into just that one rotation, making sure the entire set is
yes,
perfectly ready.
yeah. So that was kind of always like a little bit challenging, I should say. And it's really like, but I am really happy that Thomas came with the idea, because it's really make that movement differently, mostly because Maureen is actually kind of levitating between these rings.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, she's like not, because she's levitating, she's not moving like in our perspective, in like a horizontal perspective. And I think that was really the right decision to do, because that was more like a kind of, that whole world is turning.
Yeah, it really works well with the aspect of like the wheel of time turning, like it's just kind of being thrown into this new, it really makes you question, where are we physically, but also which time period, as like it kind of keeps going. I loved just how, I mean, there were so many little things in that episode, just from when we see the breaking of the world with, the fires in the sky kind of shooting up, and then the architecture of the background, where you can't quite place what exactly you're drawing inspiration of, where it feels like our world but slightly different, but it's still believable, and it feels like this could be a real place and time from our world. And there was just so much fun. The wagons, this kind of metallic wagon, as he's riding out of this structure, and then the structure itself, where I think that was a memorial for something I had read.
Yeah, that interior of that hall, when it was the throne, and when we saw these trees, it's a place in a city called Par, which is like 1 hour from Cape Town, and that on the top of the hill there's a monument of the Afrikaans language. Afrikaans is the like youngest language in the world, and of course, sadly, that the language has a kind of like a wrong connotation, or like a bad connotation, because it was kind of connected with the apartheid regime a lot. So it's like for some people, it's like that's the language of the oppression, but it's just a language. It's like it's not, the connotation of the language doesn't, that. You don't destroy Germans because of the Hitler, So it's a young language, and what they did, they built a monument which is not the sculpture, but it's like a kind of space, architectural space, which is like a sculpture and architecture together. And they built it in the 60s, and I was surprised because I didn't know about that at all, that was really very good. I don't know, I forget the name of the architect, but I was surprised like how good it was, like really like how thoughtful, sculpture architecture that was, and that guy spent a lot of time thinking about that, doing the models, and really like creating that statue, which celebrates that language. Of course, like at that time in the 60s, that regime was using that for like a celebration of the apartheid thing, but it's really related to the language itself, not anything else. So
Yeah.
there's no like a kind of improving any like a specific person or specific events. It's really like a celebration of the language, and it's like it's kind of like a monument on the top of the hill. There's like a beautiful garden there, but somehow this monument was really perfect fit for us, for the look and for the concept of the like that ward before the breaking, and instead of like having like a big hole and all of that, we were thinking, okay, maybe this could be some kind of corridor, and there are these Avendosora trees, planted in these little pots, and that's the moment that actually they are packing the most important things with them, which are these small trees.
Yeah.
And of course, for us was also important that we were able to, like as you mentioned, the carriages, because we know that we have to show these carriages are the same as we saw in the first season, these Tuatans, having these tinkers having these carriages, and we will see them in episode 7 as well, like when they come to the two rivers with these carriages. And but also we said like, okay, maybe they had some some kind of cars or something in that moment and in the Age of Legend. And we said no, but they are they know that this will happen, and suddenly it's happening. So they do have these metal carriages, but they are already using the horses. So actually we established that moment of like the house on the wheels, pulled by the horses. And even like we had like a slightly different designs of it at that time, and everything was kind of clean and neat because there was like a really the culture which was able to produce it. It was kind of like escape, capsules, and they know that they need the horsepower to actually be able to travel with these cars.
Yeah, if the world's falling apart, they're not going to be able to change a tire in 60 years.
Yeah. So they already like that was the purpose of these kind of cars, that they know that they have to use the horses because they can feed the horses, but they couldn't like find the gas or like find all of that, or I don't know, whatever, electric energy or whatever. So that was kind of like a one point, and after that we were trying to every single culture which we met through that journey to a little bit different. And some of these camps we had a little bit more time, like at that moment when Rand killed the guy, or like at his in his previous life, he killed this guy that like that thief, and like the killer, and even like because it's a very strong moment, that even it's like a self-defense. It was really like a very strong moment, and that's something which is kind of appear at the episode 7 when we saw that young guy killing the Trolloc. And even he's protecting the child, even he's like killing the Trolloc, which is not even like a human for them. He took somebody's life, and which means that his mother will never be accepting him back to the society because he break the rule. I think it was a kind of strong moment because there was like some story which was told, and suddenly we see that story in a completely different time, in a completely different place, happening to somebody else. And I really like that moment, that even like that there was a self-defense and everything, like that mother was not able to accept him back because he killed something, like he took the life. Even there was a Trolloc, and even he was like holding the baby and trying to protect not only by himself but also the baby, which he was holding. So that was like, I think it was kind of a lot of these kind of strong moments which were tied together. And episode 4 was from that point of like the best in a way, like how to show the war and how to describe all these like previous lives. And it was very tricky for the actors and for the kind of for the whole crew to understand what we are doing, like that the whole thing, like why Rand, when he's walking through these pillars, he's start walking, and after each walk is much harder for him, like so. And maybe you heard about like that we actually they had kind of stunt guys prepped for the Yosha, some kind of like a pulley that he was like really pulling this very heavy counterweight, so that
Yeah.
actually that every single step of his was much harder and harder. He actually had that help, like a physical help, that is not like a just he pretending it's hard, but it was really hard for him. Like it was not like a easy, because it was kind of like a stretcher which was prepared by the stunt team, and like a train with Yosha, that he was like a walking, and every single step was harder and harder for him to walk, because he had that kind of weight, and the weight was bigger and bigger every single moment when he was like walking through these pillars. So all these things were kind of like discussed, and I think it was really great that Thomas Nepper came to that show, that he came back, and I think that was really another thing which was very helpful. That the Kiran, who did the last two episodes of season 1, and Thomas, who did the first 2 episodes of season 2, came back to the show. And I think that was really important that that we had a director who already knew what we are doing and what is the show about. And it's really much harder than the normal show, that to get into the world and to understand all these like aspects, because usually director has a very limited time to get into everything. So I think that was really important.
Have you seen any of the responses from people after episode 4? Because I think overwhelming, everyone who watched that episode walked away just like, wow, wow.
Yeah. So yeah, it's an episode which actually got the highest rating in IMDb. So it was really like and I was like watching these these channels on the YouTube's like that, because I feel like these guys, because you have like a kind of certain groups of the guys who are like shooting the videos, and if somebody is like a clear hater, you don't wanna watch it, because like there are like a group of people that really hate the show and hate the fact that it actually doesn't look like they want.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. And after that, there are really like people, they know a lot about the books, a lot about the world, and they are kind of fans, but I should say like a critical fans. So they are not like a kind of like appraising everything. They are really like saying, okay, I don't like this, it doesn't work, it's kind of wrong for the book, or it's like it does work, or this is better than in the book, or this is much worse in the book, because I didn't have that kind of feeling of the the world behind that. So I feel it's really for me that was kind of fun, that after each episode was released, I was watching these different either YouTube videos or podcast, or listening to podcast, what they said about that, and I think it's really kind of important to have that kind of feedback. If these guys, and that's something what I like, that they were kind of critical, but they still kind of like the show.
They were into it.
And they were into it. And it wasn't like that kind of clear haters that they said like, oh, everything is wrong and everything is bad and everything. And of course, it's a choice. Everybody has a choice what how he wanna or she wanna show herself or himself. It's just a matter of like that. If you are spending some time and you feel like that you really trying to do your best, you prefer to to talk with the people with the open mind, and like really telling you, okay, I do like what you did, or I don't like it, because that kind of because is really important for me, because it's a part of the thinking about the story, that I don't know, that the Battle of Two Rivers. A lot of people who said like we like the battle, the way how it was shot, but it was wrong for the this and this. And I do like that kind of feedback, because it's kind of telling me what we maybe did wrong, what is good, and how this work all together. And so it's a kind of interesting, and it's a different than usually, because usually you have on a script, everybody's kind of following only the show, but you have the books, and that's something which is really important, that everybody's kind of like talking about that a lot. And also what is the important for me, and that's kind of like a creatively very important, that these books, they have a lot of levels and a lot of depth, and you can really like choose your your pattern which you want to follow
Yeah.
in that, because of course the like at the TV screen or like these streaming screens are different. There's a different pattern, different scale what you can show, and that's like because these are novels that you can really say on the one page a lot of information, which is very hard to show in the TV world and all like or streaming world. And so suddenly these 8 hours is not enough. Even it sounds like a really a lot of time, it's not enough to tell the story, because you need some screening time. You want to show something, you want to slow down sometimes, and really just like let's say see the environment, see the people, and make the moments like I don't know, moment of the song of Tanchiko, whatever. It's like
Yeah.
to kind
Yeah.
of slow down the story, like so. I feel like it's challenging, and of course I'm sure that, and I have the same experience like when I saw the movie based on the book which I love as a kid, or as a when I read it first. It's always not ideal. It's always the same thing, so
But it's
because
also
some, yeah,
only 8 episodes that is
yeah,
covering,
yeah,
even if you look at the audiobook, it's like what, like 60 hours or something? I mean, it's like
yeah.
you've got so much material, and as I feel like in the past few years, seasons of television have become shorter and shorter. It's just what it is. Back in the day, you would have a season of television where it's, 20 episodes.
Hmm.
And that's just the nature, I think, of how things have kind of shifted recently. And I think what's so great about the Wheel of Time is that, for one, nobody's gonna be happy, 100%, like, this is a perfect one-to-one adaptation, because that simply cannot happen when you've got so much material that is being condensed. But what I do really enjoy about the show is you're getting these really, really big moments that people have a lot of emotional attachment to, like this entire sequence of Rhuidean, or like the Battle of Emmons Field. Like, you're getting these big moments, and I think what the show really, really excelled in this season, I mean, episode 4 was incredible. Getting to see all of that was truly, I think, like a dream for a lot of
Hmm.
people. But also, not only was it visually interesting to look at, not only was the cinematography well done, the colors, the way everything looked, but it also had a lot of heart in that story, where there's some moments that, like, I cried on multiple occasions, where, like you said, when Lewin's mother is like sending him away, and then, like you also said, there's these little callbacks in further, episodes down the line where it happens to Aram, the Tuatha man. And so, I don't know, like, this season, it just felt so everything felt very connected, and it was such a fun season to go through, and then on top of that, there were some, I think, fun surprises where there were moments that weren't exactly like it was in the book, but it made things interesting for me not knowing what exactly to expect, like, specifically with Elida and her time with the Finn, and, like, little twists where it was like, "Okay, now I get to ask questions, and I get to kind of feel like I'm a little detective trying to, like, figure out, 'Okay, well, is she gonna do this? Where did the bracelet come from?' This and that." So, it was a lot of fun. It was a really fun season.
Yeah, it was, and I think that, that the one thing which I'm really proud of is really, I have a feeling that we did like from the beginning, or if I may talk about myself, is like that
Yes,
I was
please.
like delivering my maximum all the time, but still I feel like that we improved the quality of the sets, and kind of like the details on each season more and more, and that's what I'm proud of. That actually that we found a way how to be in that world and improve it. And it's really like it took some time before because you have an art director who is like doing some sets, but before he will get into the details of that set, it will take him some in that culture, which he's like doing either Tanchico or Cold Dog's Halt, or it takes some time. And I feel like that in this season, we were really doing another step towards the like a more cinematic and more like a visual world. Of course, there was the help that Amazon approved to and Sony they approved to go with that wide aspect ratio, which helped us mostly.
Yeah.
And I'm happy because of the aisle waste and the desert, because it's really like kind of really perfect for the nature and for these kind of wide
Yeah.
open fields. And I think it's really like important because it's not so much visible if you are within the rooms, but if you are going outside and suddenly you are in the desert and you have like these wide open tents and all of that, suddenly that aspect ratio is very important. So that was one thing which was really helpful. But also all the sets and everything, I feel like that we did better than before. And it's not because we did like something wrong, but I think that we learn more. And I'm really proud about that, because I always feel like that if you have a kind of like energy and quality to improve your work, even so I didn't have like anybody in my crew talking on the art department who said like, okay, we did it before, we will do it well. No, it was everybody was like trying to do the best for this season. And it wasn't like anything like, okay, we did it on the first season, we don't have to care about that at all. Like it was really like another improvement over everything. And even we came back to the Two Rivers and, and the White Tower and the Star Valon and all these sets which we saw before. I feel that every single one was like a kind of improved towards than what we saw before. And not because we didn't pay attention before, but because we just learn more, so. And I'm really proud about that, because I think that was something which was really different for my previous experience, because sometimes you have a show that everything is like kind of, like the pilot is big and, and they have a season and which is looking great. And after that, for many reasons, like it's going down because you don't have like as good cast and I think that in this one we actually kind of
Went up
improved
and
all
up.
the time.
Yeah,
And I think it's
definitely.
really definitely about and I hope that they will not hate me, because I feel like all these like young kids, they improve themselves like really, they grew up with the set, with the
Yeah.
story. And I think that every single one, like Joshua, Marcus, like Maddie and Zoe, and they went up, like with the acting, and McDonald as well. And it's like a really kind of visible. And I think that that's really what I like about this season, that we went up with the everybody, like so. And it was like we didn't have like any single normal season, because the first one was really hardly hit by the COVID, very hardly. And that's, for example, one of the point why the end of the first season wasn't ideal, for so many reasons, but one of the key reasons was the COVID and the restriction on the shoot. And which was kind of like a damaging the finale of the first season, because we couldn't show the fight, we couldn't show the physical connection between the fighters because of these COVID restrictions. And the second season was still kind of influenced by the COVID and the fact that we were traveling to Italy during the COVID, like everything was closed. And when we did the first scouts, there was like really only one hotel in the city where we were scouting and all of that. And only one hotel was open, and it's like everything was kind of like still kind of restricted by the COVID, and having these face masks and having this distance and all of that was really, I should say, annoying, but also painful.
Yeah.
And the third season unfortunately was hit by the strikes, and but I believe that we went well around that, and actually that these two events didn't like affected us, like they affected us in a sense of production, of course, in the sense of the, like some delays with the, production because we couldn't do some movement earlier, or, some scheduling earlier because we didn't have like some pages updated because of the strike. But I believe that it wasn't visible on screen, and that's kind of like a really important, that because at the end nobody cares about COVID or about any restrictions during the shoot. Everybody is like watching the season and would like to enjoy the show. So yeah, so I feel like that, and that's what I'm really proud of, that actually I had a chance to be a part of it, and I had a chance to be like a really from the beginning, from the real, like from the page when you see the text, and really like improving the every single detail there.
Before I wrap things up, I wanted to ask you one question about some of these like very final last moments of season 3, where we see, Perrin off with the white cloaks, and he's kind of being followed by Fail and Bane and Chiad, and then the death of Swan Sanche, and then Rand pretty much having this like big show of energy and Egwene telling him to let go of the power. It ends on a very dark note where it's kind of just like all of our characters, all of our groups have kind of, like they've fought and they've tried and they had so much that they were trying to do. And in the end, they kind of are just in this spot of like, okay, now we have to regroup. Now we have to fight the shadow back.
Yes.
And this. So if season 4 does come and you're thinking about like the tone of this, what would you like to see moving forward?
In general, like that, we are going into that moment that we know that Rand is actually affected by the channeling. So we know that this will be like a really one of the moment, and we know that the White Tower was actually hit by the like a dark power on this dark, and we know it's actually destroyed that kind of like a kind of because we came for the first season when we came to the White Towers, like that white marble everywhere, everything was
beautiful,
kind of beautiful, everything was full of like flowers and like a pleasant places, and there was like a no dark corners, and suddenly between these sisters you realize that not all the sisters are the nice ones, and you realize that actually that even it could be even worse, that even some nice sisters could be really bad ones at the end. And even like a not expected one, which is like a really important thing, because that's kind of really very close to the human life and all of that. So I feel like that's really what is important, that suddenly they realize that this is not kind of fun, and it's a kind of like that kind of moment that we are really stepping out from that fairy tale-ish moment that actually Rand will be that kind of prince on the white horse, because it's not the one, like that, because the channeling is the danger, and the power is danger as well. So it's not like that okay, now we have a happy end and Rand is dead, and now we have like I think that for me, for example, episode 7 was very emotional, because we had like these few moments of the sacrifice, like Perrin decide to sacrifice himself and his freedom for the fact that he will save the village, as well as Aram is his name, sacrifice himself because he killed the troll, and he knows that he will be punished for that, but he actually saved the kid, and Loyal, saved that, because he closed the way gate, or destroyed the way gate, which was closer to the two rivers. So he was actually saving that, like the whole water of the two rivers, because there was no chance for another trolls to come in. So I think that was like a really the moment of the sacrifice, and the moment that actually in the next step is that you will see who is able to deal with that situation, who is to help you, and who will go the dark way, like the dark path, and I think that's really important for the rest of the, like a story. If that story will be ever told on the screen. It's just it's really there's a lot of things done, but I think what is really kind of important, and it's a completely different show, and maybe it's a wrong analogy, but it's really like for me, it's like in Harry Potter, it's starting like a kids story, like little kids. This is some kind of fun. There are some like a school, and like a school stories. And but once they are getting more and more adult, and the story is more and more darker, so it's so I feel like that's kind of like the situation now, that actually even like we don't have a kids because everybody is adults. There is like the same, they come to the solution that the world is much more complicated than they expected, and there's a lot of things which has to be kind of solved, not easily, and not just like a one simple magic or one simple channeling couldn't solve that, so. And it's not just like if you are killing the bad guy, everything will be fine, because you have to kind of get rid of the more death than just one. So
Right.
And if they are all like a fighting, somebody has to stop fighting, and all of that thing were really like strong for me. And even I know that so many people had an issue with episode 7. I feel like at that moment of the sacrifice, and the moment of like a self-understanding, what is the situation, because Perrin, that moment, had no reason to kind of give himself to the White Clocks. He can just ask the villagers to kill the White Clocks and get rid of them, because there was like a few of them coming to the village. But he kept his promise that he will give himself if they will help to save the village. And, and that he didn't kill Padam Fain because he had that kind of feeling that he has to help.
That was another sacrifice. He could have killed him, but it would have gotten more people killed in the end.
Exactly. So it's like this is kind of like that. If I should say that, I feel like the whole thing becomes more, maybe darker, but maybe more deeper, and in the way that there is no like a simple solution. Like there is no like a simple way that actually, if you will kill this guy, everything will be fine and sun will be shining. Like it's really like because it's more complicated than that. And I think that was really like in that killing the Padam Fain was like, okay, he can kill him immediately, and everybody was like saying, "Oh, kill him." But if he will kill him, the trolls will continue fighting, because Padam Fain was the fate of that situation. He was in the position of the fate, and so he had to also the possibility to stop that. So all of that was kind of important for the storytelling, and I think that's really the story of the next possible episodes, that that they have to go through that the world, which is not easy, and which is not like and everybody unfortunately had that moment of like killing somebody or taking somebody's lives, and it's immediately much harder to walk through that in their lives, I guess that kind of experience and the thing that would happen, like suddenly Elaine kills somebody, like it's not easy to go through it, so that everybody had that kind of guilt in themselves, and they have to kind of find a way how to regroup and find a way what is the next step, and Rand has to find a way what to do with his power, and to find a way if he's able to control it or not at all, and in at the end. So there's really a lot of things, but which could be improved there, and there's a lot of things which could be told, which were told and which could be told in the next season, definitely.
Well, Ondrej, it's always so much fun getting to hear all of your thoughts and hear about all the things that go on behind the show and how it's made. And thanks again for joining me. And it's been great.
Thank you. And so it's really like fun always to talk with because you have a lot of interviews, and it's always much better to have with a show like that that you are talking with somebody who had inside look into the concept and to the story, because suddenly you realize that people who knows a little bit about the world and they are able to watch it more closely and with the attention to the details, they can it's more fun than if you have a kind of normal interview that is somebody who is really not involved in the show or in the concept of that show and all of that. So thank you for inviting me.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.